They told us we came here on ships, but these 25 banned photos tell a different story. What if Black Americans were already on this land, long before slavery, long before Columbus? What if the truth was always in the pictures, and they just erased us from them? Chronicles of Blacks. This rare photo from the 1800s shows Chief Ironbull of the Crow Nation and his wife, both with deep brown skin and clearly African features. Yet they stood in full tribal regalia, recognized as respected leaders. You won't find this in textbooks, not because it's fake, but because it complicates the lie. The photo was quietly archived, while new textbooks told you all Native people looked the same. This image proves that Black presence in Native tribes wasn't accidental. It was ancestral. It was known. It was removed to push a cleaner, whiter version of history, but this photo still speaks. Stephen Nichols was a descendant of Native royalty and a war veteran. In his official portrait, he stands with pride in traditional Narragansett attire. His skin, dark. His nose, wide. His story, erased. In later years, people like him were simply reclassified as Black, their tribal rights stripped and their identity rewritten. This photo isn't just powerful, it's criminally overlooked. It exposes a pattern: erase the tribe, keep the labor, forget the legacy. He wasn't a freedman, he was Native. But history didn't want Black and Native to coexist, so it buried both. A soft, haunting portrait of a Choctaw girl dressed in early tribal clothing, her hair tightly coiled, her skin dark as polished wood. She is smiling, but we don't know her name. Her photo lives on as proof that Afro-Indigenous children were real, visible, and everywhere. Yet by the 20th century, laws like the one-drop rule would erase her Native identity entirely. She'd be called colored, denied tribal heritage, and forgotten by both sides. But here, in this photo, she is undeniable. A child of two nations, erased by both. Photographed in a North Carolina village, this man claimed Croatan heritage. The camera captured his eyes, his skin, his dignity, everything that history tried to overwrite. He wasn't enslaved, he wasn't freed. He was Native and Black, long before those terms were at war. His community, the Lumbee, fought for centuries to keep their records intact, but officials called them mulattoes to strip them of land. This photo is his resistance. It says, "We were here. We didn't need to arrive. We were never missing." Edward Curtis photographed thousands of Native Americans, but some, like this young Mandan girl, weren't featured in textbooks. Her skin was dark, her nose was broad. Her ancestors, likely a blend of African traders and local tribes. Curtis didn't explain her features. He just photographed her and moved on. But this photo doesn't lie. It tells a deeper story, that Blackness didn't intrude into Native bloodlines. It was already there. This young girl wasn't an outsider. She was the future they erased. What if you weren't allowed to be Native simply because you looked too Black? That's what the one-drop rule did. Enforced across the United States in the 19th and 20th centuries, it declared that if you had even one drop of African blood, you were legally Black. And that meant you could be erased from tribal roles, land rights, and even your family's own cultural memory. It didn't matter if your mother spoke Choctaw or your grandfather was Cherokee. If your skin was dark, your identity was rewritten. You became colored, and your ancestry disappeared in ink. It wasn't biology, it was policy. The US government used this rule to strip Black Native Americans of sovereignty, property, and tribal legitimacy. Census workers were instructed to reclassify dark-skinned natives as Negro or mulatto. This is why so many of your ancestors are invisible in records, not because they weren't there, but because they weren't allowed to exist on paper. So if this rule erased thousands, how many of us were actually indigenous all along? Texas and Florida, black Seminoles served as scouts for the US Army. Dressed in tribal patterns, carrying rifles, these men weren't just soldiers. They were indigenous. Descended from Africans who joined Seminole tribes, they fought to protect native land, but history labeled them simply as Negro troops. This photo proves otherwise. They were culturally native, spiritually native, and politically native. Yet today, their indigenous roots are denied, even though they gave their lives for it. Freeman Colber was a leader in the Creek Nation. This portrait shows him in full regalia, standing tall with dignified black features. After the Civil War, the US pressured tribes to purge freedmen from their roles. Colber and others resisted, but many black natives were written out. This image reminds us that our faces led nations too, not just followed orders. Wearing traditional beadwork and a calm gaze, this Cherokee child's photo comes from an old family album. Her rich skin tone and tightly curled hair say, what records wouldn't, she belonged to a tribe. Generations later, her descendants were denied citizenship because of skin. But this photo is a visual genealogy. It says, we were there, and we wore it proudly. John Horse was a war chief of Seminole and African ancestry. He led resistance movements and helped free enslaved black people. In his portrait, his dark complexion and warrior stance speak volumes. He wasn't an ally, he was a leader. Yet textbooks skip him because he breaks the false racial binary. This image reveals the lie. Native and black weren't enemies, they were one. A family of 6 stands in front of a North Carolina cabin, clearly indigenous, clearly black. This Lumbee family was labeled colored on government forms, stripping them of land and rights. But the photo contradicts it all. Their dress, language, and customs were native. The camera captured what the pen erased. She sits quietly on a wooden chair, wrapped in tribal patterns. Her gaze is proud, not passive. A Chickasaw freedwoman, she was part of a treaty-bound community that included black tribal members. When the Dawes roles were created, people like her were placed on a separate freedman role and told, you're not native anymore. This photo says otherwise. Beckworth was born to a black mother and later adopted into the Crow Nation, where he became a war chief and historian. His portrait shows a rugged mountain man with distinctly African features. Yet history books call him a frontiersman, ignoring his indigenous identity. This photo proves he wasn't just near the tribe, he was part of it. This Yuchi child stares into the lens with large, deep eyes. His features are unmistakably African, but his beads and garments are all tribal. As the US absorbed Indian territory, children like him were stripped of their identity. Labeled colored, they were separated from their roots. But this photo still speaks. I was here, and I was both. In this faded image, a Comanche warrior of African descent rides horseback with bow in hand. His face is blurred, but his story is sharp. Many Comanche bands included black members who married in and fought alongside them. This man wasn't a visitor, he was a warrior. And this photo captures a legacy erased by borderlines and blood laws. Two elders sit outside a wooden home in Mississippi. Their attire is Choctaw, their skin is dark, their eyes clear with memory. These were elders who carried stories of migration, colonization, and cultural survival. Today, many Choctaw tribes disavow African lineage. But this photo says otherwise. The roots run deep, and the blood remembers. You took the test, you waited for truth, but the results told you something was missing. Many Black Americans who take commercial DNA tests find something strange, little to no native ancestry. But how is that possible when family stories, facial features, and even land claims say otherwise. The truth? Most DNA databases are built without Native American samples. Why? Because tribal governments often refuse to submit DNA for sovereignty reasons. Without those samples, companies can't identify indigenous markers, so your ancestry is reported as sub-Saharan African or broadly West African, even when that's not the full truth. Some geneticists even warn, your DNA may be native, but the system is designed not to see it. So if the photos prove it and the DNA tests erase it, what else have they hidden from you? This portrait shows a dark-skinned man and woman in traditional Cherokee dress, standing proudly. Their features are unmistakably African, but their garments and documented tribal status confirm their indigenous roots. This photo captures a couple, erased by classification, but remembered in the frame. With tight curls wrapped under a beaded headdress, this Blackfoot woman's photo challenges racial narratives. Though labeled colored by census agents, she was a respected tribal midwife. The photo endures, speaking louder than ink. She was native, and she was black. In this classroom photo, several children appear visibly black, yet the school is listed as a Creek Nation institution. These were not outsiders, they were tribal citizens. The image is proof that black children were educated, included, and erased, all in the same century. Leaning on a carved staff, this man wears feathers and beads, smiling softly. His dark skin tells one story, his regalia another. In life, he was both. In death, the records only captured his color, but the camera remembered his culture. This photo is proof. She's young, maybe 7. Her hair is full and natural. Her eyes soft. Dressed in tribal embroidery, she stands with pride. Her image, recovered from a family archive, tells the story of a people caught between two labels and forgotten in both. But she's here. Painted face, animal skin robe, spear in hand. This warrior stands tall and dark-skinned. The Crow Nation once adopted freed black men into full warrior ranks. This photo, hidden in archives, shows that our ancestors weren't just present, they protected nations. In this official group portrait, 3 of the men have distinctly African features. These weren't outsiders, they were leaders. Today, descendants of such men are often denied tribal status. But this photo tells the truth. Leadership looked like us too. Caught mid-movement, these dancers wear full tribal garb. Their skin glows dark in the sunlight, and their features resemble the very people erased by reclassification. This photo wasn't meant to survive, but it did. The dance, the heritage, the truth lives on. Photographed outside her home, she stands barefoot in Choctaw garb. Her name was changed in official documents. Her identity was stolen by laws. But her image survived. One frame, one body, 2 heritages, and a truth she could never speak. But we now can. A family of 6 stands in front of a tent at a tribal gathering. Their skin tones range from brown to deep black, but their dress is entirely native. This photo was stored without caption, without names, but it shouts, "We were here, we celebrated, we belonged." What if Albert Perry is the smoking gun, the final proof that black people didn't just arrive in America, they may have originated here? The 25 banned photos we've just shown you are more than forgotten portraits. They're puzzle pieces, fragments of an erased past. And Albert Perry's DNA, that's the key that ties them all together. His story forces us to ask, how many more black Americans carry ancient bloodlines never catalogued by science? How much truth has been buried under layers of classification, mislabeling, and political agendas. The one-drop rule didn't just strip Black people of native identity, it also hid something far deeper: the possibility that Black Americans aren't just descendants of slaves, but descendants of the first people on this land. Not immigrants, not cargo, but the original inhabitants. You saw the images. The proud gaze of the Afro-Cherokee girl, the stoic strength of the Blackfoot woman, the joy in the faces of the Seminole dancers, the Powwow family, dark-skinned and dignified, the warriors, the elders, the children, all erased from textbooks but immortalized in film. These photos don't ask for your permission to be real. They are real, and their existence exposes a system that worked tirelessly to hide them. Why? Because the greatest threat to a lie is evidence. If this video shook something in you, it was meant to, because they didn't just erase faces from books, they erased you, your origin, your name, your dignity, your indigenous birthright. But it's not lost, it's just waiting to be reclaimed. So here's what you do. Comment if any of those photos look like someone in your family. Share this video before it gets buried, like the history it uncovered. Subscribe if you're ready to help restore what was stolen, because the greatest revenge against erasure is remembrance. The ancestors are watching, and now, so are we.